Hello, this is Catherine from Accelerated Reader, reading books for you. Today I will be reading Chapter 8 from The Bucket by D.J. Cattrell, illustrated by Mei Lee. Before I begin reading, I would like to give a big thanks to the author for sending me this book to read on my channel. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Chapter 8. After a short while of walking, Rachel noticed the sun was going down faster. Shadows were being cast by small hills and rocky outcrops. One of these rocky outcrops seemed to have a faint green glow about it. "There," she said. "Let's head that way. We've got to find somewhere to hide during the night." Robin was, as usual, being churlish. "Look, I don't want to bring the party down or anything, but when are we going back? I've got a football match tomorrow, and as the striker, it's fairly bloody important that I turn up. I know you're enjoying yourself in this weird place, but really, I have had enough. I want to go home now. Can't we just press the jewels and go home? I need a rest and I'm hungry." Rachel was utterly outraged, not just by his impatience, but also by his utter selfishness and his entire lack of understanding of their situation. She turned on Robin with clenched fists. "That's it, Robin McRacker. That's it. We'll just press the jewels and go home and leave my sister and your father here for another 8 years, shall we? Your father, you haven't seen him for 8 years, and you would prefer to go and play a football match than to rescue him from this place. You are the most selfish, spoilt, thick little—" Robin put his hand up to her. "Rachel, turn around." The tone of his voice told her that something was very wrong. She stared at him for a moment and then slowly turned, wondering what had made Robin turn white. In the far distance was what looked like a cloud, a black, ominous cloud. But it wasn't a cloud because no cloud traveled that fast. There was no wind, and this, not cloud, was headed straight for them. They both had the same thought as each other. "Dragons! Run!" they told each other in unison. Rachel began to run for the green, glowing rocks. As she ran, she calculated the approximate speed of the cloud and the distance to the rocks, but wasn't sure if they would make it in time. She quickly looked over her shoulder to make sure that Robin was keeping up. But Robin was overtaking her. Fear, it seemed, had given him extra legs because he was fast. Really fast. Rachel had won every school running race in her whole life, or for as long as she could remember. But this boy was running like he had wings on his feet. Weirdly, she noticed he was running quite gracefully too. It was more like a gallop than a run. The cloud was getting closer, and it became obvious to her that she wasn't going to make it. Then Robin did something very un-Robin-like. Even though he was way ahead of her and heading to the safety of the rocks, he stopped dead, turned around, and ran back to Rachel. As it seemed that he was about to pass her, going the other way, he stuck out his arm, grabbed Rachel round the waist, and scooped her up. lifting her off the ground. He turned again and ran straight towards the rocks with her in his arms. She was too stunned and confused to even think straight, and within less than a minute he had dropped her down by what seemed to be a large cave entrance with the rocks themselves. The cloud passed over them just as they became hidden by the rocks. The cloud was 5 black dragons. As they passed overhead, Rachel saw them properly for the first time. They were sleek, and their scales glinted in the evening light. They didn't seem to have seen the pair hiding in the rocks. Robin whooped with delight. "Wow, I can run! I've never run like that before. Did you see that? I was amazing!" Rachel turned to him, surprised by his outburst. "Shut up, you idiot! They'll hear you." Robin ignored her. "And I'm strong, really strong. When I picked you up, it was like lifting a feather. Wow!" Rachel couldn't believe how stupid he was being. She looked to see if the dragons had heard him. They had. They were wheeling in the sky and heading straight for them and the cave. "Look what you've done, you idiot! They're coming back." Robin looked to the sky. Oops. Rachel weighed up their options. They could try to outrun the dragons, but even with Robin's newfound strength and speed, the dragons would catch them in minutes. Or the cave, with God knows what lurking in there. No choice. The cave it had to be. Fling had said they could go through the caves, so if this was one of the caves he was talking about, then there had to be another way out. "Come on, we've got to go." Robin looked at her aghast. "In there? You're kidding. It's dark." He sniffed the air. "And it smells weird." Rachel just pointed at the dragons that were nearly upon them. "Stay here and play with them, then?" With that, she turned and walked into the cave, which was indeed dark. Robin followed her with his head turned, watching the dragons getting closer and closer. He looked at the size of the cave entrance and wondered if a dragon could fit through. Rachel's eyes began to adjust to the dark. She could see that they were in a tunnel. She could see quite well, actually, almost like it was daylight. It was quite a big cave, maybe even big enough for a dragon to get in. They heard an almighty angry screeching behind them and could just make out the dragons at the entrance. "They'll be in here in a minute," she thought. But the dragons didn't enter. Instead, they screamed and stamped their fury at the entrance. Rachel waited a few seconds, then whispered to Robin, "I think we're okay. They're not coming in." Robin also looked around and noticed that actually he could see in the dark quite well. "Hey, Rach, I can see in the dark." Rachel was curt in her response. "Really? How wonderful for you. I can too, for some reason. It must be something to do with the breath of the unicorn. And don't call me Rach. Only my friends call me that." Robin smarted at this rebuff. "Rubbish! I'm just naturally gifted, Rach. The unicorn has nothing to do with it." Rachel felt that need to punch Robin again, but resisted. "The only thing that you are natural at is being an idiot and a liability." Robin was visibly hurt. "I am not a liability." "What's a liability?" And then he fell backwards over a rock, landing in a heap on the floor. Rachel rolled her eyes. She could have screamed with frustration. The rock lifted itself up and scuttled away into the cave. Why? Why did it have to be him of all people? She really regretted showing him the bucket. He was useless and hopeless at almost everything, even if he was 13. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for Chapter 9. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book.